So here are the routes we have defined in an app module. Some of these routes should be accessible to anonymous users. For example, they should be able to view all the products we have in our store. They should be able to add them to shopping cart and modify their shopping cart. But when they're going to check out, I want to enforce them to log in. So I want to protect these routes from anonymous users. Currently, even though I'm logged out, I can simply go here and access the checkout page. Look, we got the checkout page. So we want to protect this route using a route guard. So open up the terminal and generate a new service. We're going to call this auth-guard. Okay, now back in app module, first we're going to register this as a provider. So auth-guard service. Actually, I prefer to rename this to auth-guard because it's kind of more conventional and shorter. So with F2, we can rename this to auth-guard. Okay, now let's go to the implementation of this service. So here we want to implement can activate interface, which is defined in Angular/router. So we're going to implement a method called can activate, which should return true or false. So here we want to get the authentication status of the current user. If the user is logged in, we're going to return true. Otherwise, we're going to navigate them to the login page and return false. So in order to get the authentication state, we need to inject our auth service. So private auth of type auth service. And here we access this user observable. We subscribe to it. We get a user object. Now, if we have a user, we're going to return true. Otherwise, we need to navigate the user to the login page. So for that, we need to inject the router service into this class. So private router of type router. So here we call this the router, the navigate. We're going to send them to the login page and return false. Now there's a problem with this implementation. We're subscribing to this observable, but there is no way to unsubscribe here. Because here we're not implementing a component, so we don't have the can destroy interface. Also, as you can see from this red underline, we have a compilation error. Class authGuard incorrectly implements interface can activate. So here we need to return a boolean, a true or false, but TypeScript compiler thinks we're returning void because all we're doing here is subscribing to this observable. And this statement, return true or return false, is executed sometime in the future, not immediately upon calling this can activate method. Now let me show you something. Let's take a look at the declaration of this interface on the Angular website. So can activate. Here it is. So look, our can activate method can return one of these three values: an observable of boolean, or a promise of boolean, or a boolean. So we don't necessarily have to return a boolean here. We can return an observable of boolean. And that means we can come back here. Instead of subscribing to this observable, we're going to call the map operator. We're going to transform this observable from a user object into a boolean. And Angular will internally subscribe to this observable and then remove the subscription later. So I'm going to replace the subscribe method with the map operator. We need to import this on the top. So import rxjs add operator map. And finally, we need to return the result of this mapping. So here with this map method, we're mapping an observable of Firebase user to an observable of boolean. Okay, so this is how we implement an authGuard. Now let's go back to our app module and apply this guard to a few routes. So first I want to protect this checkout route. So here I'm going to add the canActivate property, set it to an array, and in this array we add auth guard. Let's test the application up to this point. So here, I'm going to navigate to the checkout page. Look, we got redirected to the login page. Beautiful. So now let's apply this guard on a few other routes. I'm going to copy this. Also want to protect the order success page. And similarly, my orders, let's paste that here. Login should be accessible to anonymous users. And finally, we need to protect the admin pages. Now later in this section, I'm going to show you how to ensure that only admin users can access these two routes. But for now, let's not worry about that and simply paste our auth guard here. Now to make this code cleaner and more organized, I'm going to put all the routes that are accessible to anonymous users first. So here's our login route. I'm going to move this on the top here. So these are all the routes for anonymous users. Then we have these three routes for our normal users and these two routes for our admins. That's better.